and even counterintuitive. In fact, we've been taught to chase after confidence our entire lives. Straight A's in school, quick and decisive answers. This sounds all too familiar, and this is pretty good, right? And I will admit, not all doubt is created equally. There's the type that drags us down. It holds us back. But there's also the type that allows us to push forward with curiosity. And it's this doubt that is rooted under the surface of humanity's greatest breakthroughs and discoveries. In the words of Descartes, doubt is the origin of wisdom. So why do I picture Gandalf, this old wizard, as wise when it seems like he always just knows the perfect solution right away? And I picture myself, a high schooler with many doubts, as anything but wise. And I think in many ways we've been conditioned to believe that wisdom is about being seemingly all-knowing, but this simply isn't true. Wisdom is not about knowing all the facts, it's about knowing that we don't know all the facts. It's about realizing humanity's limitations, and that no idea, no belief, or no understanding is beyond examination. However, a lot of us have the fear of not saying what we want to say and speak what we want to speak because society has taught us that we must know everything and know everything as everyone else knows it in order to speak up. In 1951, Solomon Asch ran an experiment on conformity, and it went like this. Picture you're in a room full of people, and you're all given a simple question with an obvious answer. Here's the catch. Everyone else in the room has been secretly told to give the wrong answer, and you have to go last. Do you go with your own eyes, or do you go with the rest of the group? Solomon found that 1/3 of people always went with the wrong answer, and 75% of people conformed at least once. And this is quite sad. However, the 25% that managed to stick with their own truth and own understanding of the question always got the question correct, because they had the humility to doubt the group and to think for themselves. Now, take this experiment and go back to the year 1610. Galileo was essentially the person at the end of the line. For almost 1,000 years, people believed that the Earth was in the center of the universe. Well, not Galileo. When he looked through his telescope, he saw something different, that perhaps the sun was what the Earth orbited around. And this went against the church, this went against scientists, physicists at the time, such as Aristotle. But he chose to seek the truth and stuck with what he thought to be true. And while I will admit, he did end up being in jail for the rest of his life for his beliefs, it was this doubt that redefined humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Additionally, the Enlightenment, the age of reason, relied solely upon the idea that we were able to evaluate previously accepted truths. Philosopher Immanuel Kant, a prominent philosopher at the time, exclaimed his motto of the Enlightenment to be, sapere aude, or dare to know, and have the courage to think for yourself. And this allowed people to rethink what they thought to be true their entire lives. They were able to challenge authority and the kings at the time in order to get rights back for themselves. And in the end, this led to advancements in science, new forms of democracy, and so much more, all from the simple spark and act of doubt. See, people have been doubting since forever. And not just philosophers or these famous physicists that I'm mentioning, but all of us. Think about your own life. Doubting a bad habit or toxic relationship is usually the first step out of it. So why do we all think of doubt as something negative and something to be afraid of? Well, it makes sense because when we doubt, it forces us to face the possibility of being wrong in what we thought we once knew. And also, when we doubt too much, this leads to overthinking. I, for myself, am very familiar with this. Whenever I want to start a project, when I do, which is really never, I often question my ability to complete it perfectly, and this leads to procrastination, overthinking, and the feeling of being stuck and not wanting to move forward. And I think a lot of us often struggle with this. So it's important to not overdoubt. And even with the correct amount of doubting, it's still very uncomfortable to challenge our own beliefs and actions because you're essentially putting your entire self on the line. But this is where true understanding begins. In the words of Voltaire, doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is an absurd one. In today's world, doubt is more important than ever. We're constantly bombarded with information, some true, but a lot of it is completely false. We have become too complacent, too trusting in technology, and too tied to the instant gratification that comes with an answer being just one click away. With AI and search engines and people's opinions spread across the social media and the entire internet, we live in a world where the convenience of information makes us lazy thinkers. I mean, even in the educational system, where learning should be a top priority, it's become all too easy to just sit back and passively take in the information we're being presented, rather than truly seeing if we actually understand. I mean, who knows how many times I've given a random math formula, and I have no idea how it works, I just accept it to be there. And a lot of times this happens in group projects. So one time I was told to learn about this certain verb, and I was so excited to learn all about it. But by the end of the project, I realized something. I only knew 1/3 of the information. Why? Because I only did 1/3 of the slides. I had 2 other group members, so they did the rest, and that was perfectly fine. I trusted them with what their responsibility was, and I moved on. But sometimes I look back and think, what could I have been missing? And if I had just asked myself this before, I think I would have been able to learn so much more and get so much out of these projects. Not just that project, but out of all my group work in school. Take for my chem labs, for instance. Oftentimes, I don't actually look at all the questions because I have other group members, and sometimes, if students know anything, it's to take the easy way out of things. So, how can we get out of this and take back learning and understanding for ourselves rather than leaving it up to other people and the world around us? We must resist the urge to jump towards that first answer, to that first click on Google, and to stop leaning on convenience. Because when we doubt, we're able to see things in a new level and new light. And I want you to think to yourself, when you go into a conversation, are you listening to understand or to defend your own self? Because true wisdom isn't about clinging to what we already know, it's about being able to stay open enough, and open enough to doubt yourself as well as others. Because sometimes it's not always about just defending ourselves in this world. Sometimes it's just important to listen to the world around us, but not to take it all for granted. I think it's not too late to change our mindsets and to take the time to think for ourselves every once in a while. In the words of Descartes, if you would be a real seeker after truth, it is necessary that at least once in your life, it is to doubt, as far as possible, all things. Thank you.